तो चेंज करना पड़ता है यार। 3 सब्सक्राइबर। नो, 3 सब्सक्राइबर। तो चेंज करना पड़ता है यार। तो चेंज करना पड़ता है यार।
Lord, ask it of your heart more often. Speaking of capricious and sundry bad-tempered gentlemen, I could not help but recall my own commendable conduct throughout the whole day. From early morning, an astonishing melancholy had started to torment me. It suddenly seemed that I, so alone, was being abandoned by everyone. Ask it of your heart that everyone was... Speaking of capricious and sundry bad-tempered gentlemen, I could not help but recall my own commendable conduct throughout the whole day. From early morning, an astonishing melancholy had started to torment me. It suddenly seemed that I, so alone, was being abandoned by everyone. Ask it of your heart that everyone was... Speaking... The first night. It was a wonderful night. The kind of night, dear reader, which is only possible when we are young. The sky was so starry, it was such a bright sky that looking at it, you could not help but ask yourself, is it really possible for bad-tempered and capricious people to live under such a sky? That is also a young person's question, dear reader, a very young person's question, but may the Lord ask it of your heart more often. Speaking of capricious and sundry bad-tempered gentlemen, I could not help but recall my own commendable conduct throughout the whole day. From early morning, an astonishing melancholy had started to torment me. It suddenly seemed that I, so alone, was being abandoned by everyone, that everyone was deserting me. Well, of course, anyone is entitled to ask, who is everyone? Because I've been living in Petersburg 8 years now, and I've hardly been able to make a single acquaintance. But what do I need acquaintances for? I'm acquainted with all of Petersburg as it is. That's why it seemed to me that everyone was abandoning me when all of Petersburg suddenly up and left for their dachas. I was terrified of being left alone, and for 3 whole days I wandered about the city in a state of deep melancholy, not understanding in the least what was happening to me. No matter whether I went to Nevsky Prospect, or the park, or wandered along the embankment, there wasn't a single person of those whom I have been accustomed to meet for a year now in the same place at a certain time. Of course, they don't know me, but I know them. I know them intimately. I've practically learned their faces by heart, and I admire them when they are cheerful, and am crestfallen when they grow sad. I almost struck up a friendship with a certain little old man, whom I meet every blessed day at a certain hour on the Fontanka. His face is so dignified and thoughtful. He's always whispering under his breath and gesticulating with his left hand, while in his right hand he holds a long, gnarled walking stick with a golden knob. He's even noticed me, and shows a cordial concern for me. Should it happen that I'm not at the same place on the Fontanka at a certain hour, I'm positive that he would be crestfallen. That's why we sometimes almost greet each other, particularly when we're both in a good mood. The other day, when we had not seen each other for 2 whole days and met on the 3rd day, we almost reached for our hats, but thank goodness we came to our senses in time, lowered our hands, and passed each other by in sympathy. I also have houses that are my acquaintances. As I walk, it is as if each one I come to runs out into the street in front of me, looks out at me with its windows wide open, and almost says, "Hello, how do you do? And I thank God I'm well, but in May they're going to add a floor to me." Or, "How do you do? And I'm having some repairs done tomorrow." Or, "I almost burned down and I was so scared," and so forth. I have favourites among them. Some are intimate friends. One of them intends to be treated by an architect this summer. I'll make it a point to drop by every day so that, God forbid, they don't kill it in the process. But I will never forget what happened to a certain very pretty light pink little house. It was such a sweet little stone house. It looked at me so cordially and so haughtily at its ungainly neighbours that my heart would rejoice when I chanced to walk past. Suddenly, last week, I was walking down the street, and upon turning to look at my friend, I heard a plaintive cry. "Were they going to paint me yellow?" The scoundrels! Barbarians! They spared nothing, neither the columns nor the cornices. And my friend had turned as yellow as a canary. Almost had an attack of jaundice myself, and to this day I do not have the strength to see my poor, disfigured friend, who was painted the colour of the Celestial Empire. So now you understand, reader, how I am acquainted with all of Petersburg. I've already said that for 3 whole days I was tormented with anxiety until I guessed the reason for it. And on the street I was in a bad way. This one's gone, that one's gone, where's so-and-so got to? And I wasn't myself at home either. For 2 evenings I tried to put a finger on what it was I found wanting in my room. Why was I so uncomfortable staying there? And with bewilderment I examined my green, sooty walls and the ceiling from which hung a cobweb the Matrona had been cultivating with such resounding success. I looked over all my furniture, examined every chair, wondering if that was the problem, because I'm not myself if even one chair isn't in the same place as it was the day before. I looked out the window, but it was all in vain. I didn't feel any better. I even took it into my head to summon Matrona and give her there and then a fatherly reprimand for the cobweb and for her slovenliness in general, but she merely looked at me in amazement and walked away without a word in response, so that the cobweb hangs there safe and sound to this day. It was only this morning that I finally guessed what the matter was. Why, they're all making off to their dachas and leaving me behind. Forgive the trivial style, but I'm not up to lofty turns of speech. Because, you see, everybody in Petersburg had either moved or is moving to their dacha. Because after hiring a cab, every venerable gentleman of a solid appearance was immediately transformed before my eyes into a venerable father of a family, who after his daily official duties sets off without luggage to the bosom of his family at the dacha, because every passer-by now has a quite special air about him, which all but says to every person he meets, "Gentlemen, I'm only here in passing, but in 2 hours I'm leaving for my dacha." If a window opens, upon which slender fingers as white as sugar had just drummed, and out leans the head of a pretty girl who calls to a peddler with jugs of flowers, I immediately, there and then, imagine that these flowers are being bought not simply so as to take pleasure in the spring and flowers in a stuffy city apartment, but because everybody is moving to their dacha, and they'll be taking the flowers with them. Moreover, I had already made such strides in my new special sort of discovery that I could already unerringly identify on the basis of appearance alone where their dacha was located. The residents of Kameny and Aptyekersky Islands, or the Peterhof Road, were distinguished by the studied elegance of their movements, their foppish summer suits, and the handsome carriages that brought them to the city. The inhabitants of Pagilova and further out, at first glance, inspired one with their prudence and respectability. The visitor to Krestovsky Island was distinguished by his unruffled, cheerful air. Whether I managed to run into a long procession of carters holding the reins as they lazily walked alongside their carts, loaded with whole mountains of furniture of every description, tables, chairs, couches, both Turkish and non-Turkish, and other household goods and chattels, on which, on top of everything, frequently would be sitting at the very summit of the load the wizened cook, keeping watch over her master's goods as the apple of her eye. Whether I looked at the boats, heavily laden with household utensils, as they glided down the Neva or Fontanka to Chonnaya River or the islands, the carts and boats increased tenfold, 100-fold before my very eyes. It seemed as though everything had up and left, that whole caravans had moved to the dacha. It seemed that all of Petersburg threatened to turn into a desert, so that in the end I became ashamed, hurt, and sad. I had absolutely nowhere to go, and no reason to go to a dacha. I was ready to leave with every cart, to drive off with every gentleman of venerable appearance who was hiring a cabby, but no one, absolutely no one, invited me. It was as if I, indeed, was a stranger to them. I had been walking a lot and for a long time, and I had already completely succeeded, as was my wont, in forgetting where I was, when I suddenly found myself at the city gates. I cheered up in an instant, and stepped to the other side of the barrier, walked between the sown fields and the meadows, oblivious of any fatigue, but sensing with all my being that some burden was being lifted from my soul. All the passers-by looked at me so cordially that we practically bowed to one another. Everybody was so happy about something. Every last one was smoking a cigar. And I was happy as I had never been before. It was as if I had suddenly found myself in Italy.
भाई मुझे नहीं पता कहाँ चले गए वो 2 मिनट में क्या खाने गया कुछ इसमें नहीं सर्च करना है इसमें सर्च करना ये छेली यहाँ पे है वो।
Nature had so strongly affected me, a semi-invalid city dweller who had almost died of suffocation within the city's walls. There is something inexplicably touching in our Petersburg nature, when, with the advent of spring, she suddenly displays all her might, all the powers granted her by heaven, when she bursts into leaves, dresses herself up and decks herself out in colourful flowers. Somehow, I can't help but be reminded of that weak and sickly girl at whom you sometimes look with pity, sometimes with a compassionate love, and sometimes you simply do not notice her, but then suddenly, For a moment, she somehow, unexpectedly, becomes inexplicably, wonderfully beautiful. And you, startled and intoxicated, unwittingly ask yourself, what power caused those sad, thoughtful eyes to shine with such fire? What summoned the blood to those pale, sunken cheeks? What has suffused those tender features of her face with passion? Why does that breast heave so? What was it that so suddenly summoned strength, life, and beauty to the poor girl's face that it began to shine with such a smile, came to life with such a sparkling, effervescent laugh? You look around, you search for someone, you hazard a guess. But the moment passes, and perhaps tomorrow you will once again meet the same thoughtful and distracted gaze as before, the same pale face, the same submissive and timid movements, and even repentance, even traces of some sort of deadening melancholy and annoyance at the short-lived exhilaration. And you regret that the momentary beauty faded so quickly, so irretrievably, that it flashed before you so deceptively and in vain. You regret this because there was not time for you even to fall in love with her. But nevertheless, my night was better than my day. Here's what happened. I arrived back in the city very late, and it had already struck 10 o'clock as I approached my apartment. My path ran along the embankment of the canal, where at that hour you will not find a living soul. True, I live in a very remote part of the city. I was walking and singing, because when I'm happy, I'm sure to hum something to myself, like every other happy man who has neither friends nor good acquaintances, and who, in a joyful moment, has nobody with whom he can share his joy. Suddenly, the most unexpected adventure happened to me. Somewhat to the side, leaning against the railing of a canal, stood a woman. With her elbows resting on the railing, she seemed to be looking very attentively at the canal's turbid water. She was wearing a very pretty yellow hat and a bewitching black mantilla. She's a young girl. Oh, she just has to be a brunette, I thought. It seems she had not heard my steps. She didn't even stir when I walked past, with bated breath, and with my heart beating violently. Strange, I thought. She must be completely absorbed by something. And suddenly I stopped, rooted to the ground. I had heard a muffled sob. Yes, I hadn't been deceived. The girl was crying, and a minute later there was another whimper, and then another. My God! My heart sank. And no matter how great my timidness with women, this was hardly the time. I turned around, took a step in her direction, and would certainly have uttered the word "Madam," but for the fact that I knew that this exclamation had already been uttered 1,000 times in all our Russian society novels. That was the only thing that stopped me. But while I was searching for a word, the girl came to her senses, glanced back, recollected where she was, cast her eyes down, and slipped past me along the embankment. I set off after her at once, but when she realised this, she quit the embankment, crossed the street, and set out walking down the pavement. My heart was fluttering, like a captured little bird. Suddenly, a certain incident came to my aid. On the sidewalk across the street, not far from my unknown girl, there suddenly appeared a gentleman in evening dress, a man with a solid number of years behind him, but whose gait was anything but solid. He walked, reeling and carefully leaning against the wall. The girl, meanwhile, walked as straight as an arrow, hurriedly and timidly, as girls generally do when they don't want someone to offer to see them home at night, and of course the teetering gentleman would never have caught up with her if my good fortune had not given him the idea of looking to unnatural methods. Suddenly, without saying a word to anyone, my gentleman darts off and flies as fast as his legs will carry him. And running, he catches up with my unknown girl. She was moving along like the wind, but the staggering gentleman was overtaking her. He had overtaken her. The girl cried out, and I thank my good fortune for my excellent knotty walking stick, which just happened to be in my right hand on this occasion. In an instant, I found myself on the sidewalk across the street. In an instant, the uninvited gentleman understood what was what, took into account my incontrovertible reasoning, fell silent, and dropped behind. And only when we were already quite far away did he reproach me in rather energetic terms. But his words scarcely reached us. "Give me your hand," I said to my unknown girl, "and he won't dare bother us any more." In silence she gave me her hand, which was still trembling from nervousness and fright. Oh, unbidden gentleman, how grateful I was to you at that moment! I cast a cursory glance at her. She was very pretty, and a brunette. I had guessed right. On her black eyelashes still shone the tears of her recent fright or former sorrow, I don't know which, but on her lips a smile already sparkled. She also cast a furtive glance at me, blushed, and looked down. Now then, you see, why did you drive me away? If I'd been there, nothing would have happened. But I didn't know you. I thought that you, too. But do you really know me now? A little bit. Now then, for example, why are you trembling? Oh, you guessed right from the very first, I answered, delighted that my girl was clever. That is never a bad thing where beauty is concerned. Yes, you guessed from the very first glance the sort of person you're dealing with. Yes, it's true. It's true. I'm timid with women. I'm nervous. I won't deny it. No less than you were a moment ago when that gentleman frightened you. I'm frightened now. It's like a dream. But even in my dreams, I never guessed that I would ever talk with a woman. What? Really? Yes. If my hand is trembling, then it's because such a pretty small hand like yours has never clasped it before. I've grown quite unused to women. That is, I never came used to them. You see, I'm alone. I don't even know how to talk to them. Even now, I don't know whether I've said something stupid to you. Tell me, frankly, I should tell you that I don't take offence easily. No, nothing. On the contrary. And since you're already asking me to be candid, then I will tell you that women like such timidity. And if you want to know more, then I like it as well. And I won't send you away until we reach my house. Oh, you'll make it so, I began, gasping with delight, that at once I'll stop being my timid self, and then farewell all my methods. Methods? What sort of methods? For what? Now, that's not very nice. Guilty. I won't do it any more. It was a slip of the tongue. But how do you expect me at a moment like this to have no desire to be liked? Is that it? Well, yes, for God's sake. Be kind. Consider who I am. You see, I'm already 26 years old, but I don't ever see anyone. So then, how can I speak well, cleverly, and to the point? It will be to your advantage if everything comes out in the open. I don't know how to keep quiet when my heart is speaking inside me. Well, it doesn't matter. Believe it or not a single woman. Ever. No acquaintances at all. And all I dream of every day is that at long last I will finally meet someone. Oh, if only you knew how many times I've fallen in love like that. But how? With whom? Why, with nobody, with an ideal, with the one I see in my dreams. I create entire love stories in my dreams. Oh, you don't know me. It's true, of course. I couldn't help meeting 2 or 3 women, but what sort of women were they? They were all landladies or something like that. But I'll make you laugh when I tell you that several times I've thought of striking up a conversation just like that, without ceremony, with some aristocratic lady on the street, when she is alone, it goes without saying. To speak, of course, timidly, respectfully, deferentially, ardently. To say that I am perishing all alone, so that she wouldn't drive me away, that I don't have the means to get to know any woman, to suggest to her that a woman is duty-bound not to spurn the timid entreaty of such an unfortunate man as I, that in the end all that I'm asking her for is merely to say a few brotherly words to me, with sympathy, not to drive me away at the very first moment, to take me at my word, to listen to what I have to say, to laugh at me if she likes, to give me hope, to say a few words to me, just a few words, even if we never meet again afterwards. You're laughing. But then, that's why I'm telling you. Don't be annoyed. I'm laughing at the fact that you are your own worst enemy. And if you had tried, perhaps you might have succeeded, even though it was all taking place on the street. The simpler, the better. Not a single kind-hearted woman, provided she wasn't silly or particularly angry about something at that moment, could have brought herself to send you away without those few words that you pleaded for so timidly. But, what am I saying? Of course, she would have taken you for a madman. You see, I was judging by myself. But I know a lot about how people on this earth live. Oh, thank you, I cried out. You don't know what you've done for me today. Very well, very well. But tell me, how did you recognise me to be the sort of woman with whom you considered worthy of attention and friendship? In a word, not a landlady, as you put it. Why did you make up your mind to approach me? Why? Why? But you were alone. That gentleman was too brazen. It's night now. You must agree that it was my duty. No, even earlier. There. On the other side. You wanted to approach me then, didn't you? There? On the other side. I truly don't know how to answer, I'm afraid. Do you know, today I was happy. I was walking, singing. I'd been on the outskirts of the city. I'd never experienced such happy moments before. You It seemed to me, perhaps... Well, forgive me for reminding you. It seemed to me that you were crying, and I couldn't bear to hear it. It made my heart ache. Oh my God, surely I might feel pangs of anguish for you? Surely it was not a sin to experience brotherly compassion for you? Forgive me, I said compassion. Well, yes, in a word, could I really have offended you by impulsively taking it into my head to approach you? Stop, enough. Don't speak, the girl said, having cast her eyes downward and squeezing my hand. I'm the one who's guilty of bringing it up, but I'm glad that I wasn't mistaken about you. But here, I'm already home. I need to go that way, down the lane. It's only a stone's throw away. Goodbye. Thank you. But is it really possible that we shall never see each other again? Is it possible it will end like this? There, you see, the girl said, laughing. At first you wanted just 2 words, and now... However, I won't say anything. Perhaps we'll meet. I'll come here tomorrow, I said. Oh, forgive me, I'm already making demands. Yes, you're impatient. You are practically demanding. Listen, I interrupted her. Forgive me if I again say something not quite... But here it is. I can't help coming here tomorrow. I'm a dreamer. I have so little real life that I regard such moments as this one now to be so rare that I can't help repeating these moments in my dreams. I will dream of you all night, for an entire week, all year long. I will come here tomorrow without fail, exactly here, to this very spot, exactly at this time, and I'll be happy as I recall what happened yesterday. This place is already dear to me. I already have 2 or 3 such places in Petersburg. Once, I even shed tears because of a memory like you. Who knows, perhaps 10 minutes ago, you, too, were crying because of a memory. But forgive me, I forgot myself again. Perhaps at one time you were particularly happy here. Very well, the girl said. Perhaps I will come here tomorrow, also at 10 o'clock. I see that I can't forbid you. The fact of the matter is that I have to be here. Don't think that I'm arranging a meeting with you. I'm warning you in advance that I need to be here for myself. But, you see, well, I'll tell you frankly, it would be nice if you did come. In the first place, there might be some more unpleasantness, like today, but that's beside the point. In a word, I'd simply like to see you. So I could say a few words to you. Only please don't think ill of me now. Don't think that I arrange meetings so casually. I would have made one, but let that be my secret. Only we must make an agreement in advance. An agreement? Speak, tell me all beforehand. I'll agree to everything. I'm ready for anything, I exclaimed in delight. I'll answer for myself. I will be obedient, respectful. You know me. It's precisely because I do know you that I'm inviting you to come tomorrow, the girl said, laughing. I know you completely, but see that you come on the following condition. First, only be so kind as to do what I ask. You see, I'm speaking candidly. Don't fall in love with me. That's impossible, I assure you. I'm prepared to be your friend. Here's my hand. But falling in love is impossible, I beg you. I swear, I cried, as I clasped her hand. Come, don't swear, you see. I know that you're capable of flaring up like gunpowder. Don't condemn me for speaking like this. If you only knew. I also have no one to whom I can say a word, from whom I can ask advice. Of course, the street is not the place to look for advisers, but you're an exception. I know you so well, as if we had been friends for 20 years. You won't betray me, will you? You'll see. Only, I don't know how I'm going to survive the next 24 hours. Sleep well, good night, and remember that I've already put myself into your hands. But your exclamation just now put it so nicely. Must one really account for every feeling, even for brotherly sympathy? Do you know, that was put so nicely that I suddenly thought that I might confide in you. By all means, but about what? What's it about? Until tomorrow. Let it be a secret in the meantime. It'll be better for you that way. Although from a distance it will look like a love story. Maybe I'll tell you tomorrow and maybe not. I'll talk with you a bit more first. We'll get to know each other better. Oh, and tomorrow I'll tell you everything about myself. It's as though a miracle were happening to me. My God, where am I? Well, tell me, aren't you glad that you didn't get angry as another woman would have done and drive me away from the very beginning? 2 minutes, and you've made me happy forever. Yes, happy. Who knows, perhaps you have reconciled me with myself, resolved my doubts. Perhaps such moments overwhelm me. Well, I'll tell you everything tomorrow. You'll learn everything about me. Everything. Very well. I accept. And you'll start first. Agreed. Goodbye. Goodbye. And we parted. I walked all night long. I couldn't make up my mind to go home. I was so happy. Until tomorrow.
आशिक लड़का वहाँ।
The second night. Well, so you survived, she said to me, laughing and taking hold of both my hands. I've been here for 2 hours already.
Both my
You have
hands.
no idea what I've been through today. I know. But now to the matter at hand. Do you know why I've come? Not to talk nonsense like yesterday, you know. Here's why. We need to act more sensibly from now on. I thought about all this for a long time last night. But how? How are we to be more sensible? For my part, I'm ready, but really nothing more sensible has ever happened to me in all my life than what is happening now.
अच्छा,
Is that so? First of all, please don't squeeze my hands like that. And second, I want to tell you that I thought about you long and hard today.
of course.
Well, and what conclusion did you reach? Conclusion? I concluded that we must begin all over again. Because today I came to the conclusion that I don't know you at all. That yesterday I acted like a child, like a little girl, and it goes without saying that it turned out that my kind heart was to blame for it all. That is, I praised myself, which is how it always ends when we start examining our actions. And that's why, in order to correct this mistake, I've decided to find out everything I can about you in the most detailed manner.
अच्छा,
But since there's no one from whom I can find out anything about you, you must tell me everything yourself.
okay.
Everything that there is to know. Well,
ठीक है, समझ गया.
what sort of a person are you? Quickly, begin. Tell me the story of your life. The story of my life? I cried out, frightened. My story? But who told you that I have a story to tell? I don't have a story.
इतना
But how have you lived if there's no story? She interrupted, smiling. Absolutely without stories of any kind. I lived, as they say, on my own. That is, absolutely alone. Alone. Completely alone. Do you understand what it means to be alone? But what do you mean by alone? Do you mean you never see anyone? Oh, no, of course I see people, but nevertheless I am alone. But can it really be that you don't talk to anyone? Strictly speaking, to nobody. So who are you then? Explain yourself. Wait, I'll hazard a guess. You probably have a grandmother, like I do. She's blind, and for as long as I can remember, she has never let me go anywhere, so that I've practically forgotten how to talk. A couple of years ago, I got into a lot of mischief, and she saw that she couldn't control me, so she called me over and pinned my dress to hers with a safety pin. And ever since, we sit like that for days on end. She knits a stocking, even though she's blind, and I sit beside her, sewing or reading a book to her out loud. It's such a strange way to live, and I've been pinned to her like that now for 2 years already. Oh, my God! How dreadful! But no, I don't have a grandmother like that. But if you don't, then how is it that you stay at home? Listen, do you want to know what sort of person I am? Well, yes. In the strict sense of the word? In the very strictest sense of the word. Well, then, I'm a type. Type? What sort of type? The girl cried out, laughing, as if she had not had a chance to laugh for a whole year. You're certainly very amusing company. Look, there's a bench here. Let's sit down. No one walks by here, no one will hear us, and you can begin your story, because you won't succeed in persuading me otherwise. You do have a story, only you're concealing it. First of all, what is a type? A type? A type is an eccentric, a ridiculous person, I answered, and burst out laughing myself in response to her childish laughter. He's a real character. Listen, do you know what a dreamer is? A dreamer? Excuse me, but of course I do. I'm a dreamer myself. What doesn't enter my head sometimes when I'm sitting beside my grandmother? Well, then you begin to dream, and you become so lost in your thoughts that before you know it, you're marrying a Chinese prince. But sometimes dreaming is a good thing. But then God only knows. Particularly if there's something to think about without dreaming, the girl added, quite serious now. Excellent. If you've been married to a Chinese emperor, that means you'll understand me perfectly then. Well, listen. But excuse me, I don't even know your name. At last! You certainly took your time about it.
Oh my
goodness,
God.
It never entered my head. I was so happy as it was. My name is Nastyenka. Nastyenka. And that's all? That's all? Is that really not enough for you? What an insatiable fellow you are. Not enough. On the contrary, it's a great deal, a very great deal indeed, Nastyenka. You're a kind girl if you're Nastyenka to me right away. So, there you are. So then, Nastyenka, listen to what a ridiculous story this turns out to be. I sat down next to her, assumed a pedantically serious pose, and began as though I were reading something that had been written down. There are, Nastyenka, in case you don't know, there are rather strange little corners in Petersburg. It's as if the same sun that shines for all of Petersburg's people doesn't even peek into these places, but there is another, different, new sun, as if specially ordered for these corners, and it shines on everything with a different, special light. In these corners, dear Nastinka, it's as if a completely different kind of life is lived, one that doesn't resemble that which seethes around us, but the kind that might exist in a faraway kingdom, and not among us in our serious, oh so serious times. And it is this life, which is a mixture of something purely fantastic, fervently ideal, and at the same time, alas, Nastinka, dully prosaic and ordinary, not to say incredibly vulgar. Whew, good heavens, what an introduction. Whatever will I hear next?
रुक जा पुत्र Prozac. I am hoping it means नहीं आ रहा dull, ordinary, or lacking imagination. Prozac, which I am right now. अबे तेरी Are you Prozac Harsh? चलिए इंग्लिश क्लास अपनी शुरू रखिए.
Next. You'll hear, Nastinka, it seems that I shall never tire of calling you Nastinka, you'll hear that in these corners live strange people. Dreamers. A dreamer, if you require a precise definition, is not a man, but some sort of sexless being, you see. For the most part, he makes his home somewhere in an inaccessible corner, as if he were hiding there even from the light of day, and once he goes into hiding, he sticks to his corner. Like a snail. Or at any rate, he very much resembles in this regard that entertaining animal, both animal and house at the same time, which is called a tortoise. What do you think? Why does he so love his own four walls, which are certain to be painted green, covered with soot, wretched and unforgivably grimy from tobacco smoke? Why does this ridiculous gentleman, when one of his few acquaintances comes to visit him, and he ends up losing all his acquaintances, why does this ridiculous person greet him with such embarrassment, such a changed countenance, and such confusion? As though he had just committed a crime within his four walls, as though he had been forging counterfeit notes, or some little poems to be sent to a journal with an anonymous letter in which it is revealed that a true poet has died and that his friend considers it his sacred duty to publish his ditties. Why, tell me, Nastinka, does the conversation between these two interlocutors never get going? Why does neither laughter nor some lively remark fly from the tongue of the completely unexpected and perplexed friend, who, in different circumstances, likes to laugh a great deal, as well as engage in lively banter and conversations about the fair sex and other cheerful subjects? And why, finally, does this friend, probably a recent acquaintance making his first visit, because in this case there will not be a second and the friend won't come again, why does this friend become so embarrassed, so stiff, all his wit notwithstanding, if indeed he has any, as he looks at the crestfallen face of his host, who in turn has already managed to become completely flustered and utterly muddled after gigantic but futile efforts to smooth over and keep the conversation going, to show his knowledge of the ways of the world, to talk, too, about the fair sex, and, at the very least, by such deference to please the poor person who has turned up at the wrong place and mistakenly come to visit him. Why, finally, does the guest suddenly grab his hat and quickly leave, having remembered all of a sudden some very urgent business which never existed, and somehow or other extricate his hand from the warm handshake of his host, who in every way possible was trying to show his regret and set right that which had been lost? Why does the departing friend chortle as he goes out the door, there and then vowing never to visit this crackpot, even though this crackpot is truly a most excellent fellow? At the same time, why can he not deny his imagination the passing fancy of comparing, if only remotely, the physiognomy of his recent interlocutor throughout the entire time of their meeting with the look of an unhappy little kitten, treacherously captured by children who have mauled, frightened and tormented it in every way possible, and which has finally taken refuge from them under a chair in the dark, and there for an entire hour at its leisure bristles, hisses, and washes its aggrieved face with both paws, and for a long time afterwards looks with enmity at nature and life, and even at the scraps from his master's dinner which the compassionate housekeeper had saved for him. "Listen," interrupted Nastinka, who all this time had been listening to me in amazement, with her eyes and little mouth wide open. "Listen, I absolutely do not know why all this happened, and why you are putting such ridiculous questions to me. But what I do know for certain is that all these adventures certainly happened to you, word for word." "Without a doubt," I answered with a most serious expression. "Well, as there's no doubt, then continue." Nastinka answered, because I very much want to know how it all ends.
एक
You want to know, Nastinka, what our hero was doing in his corner? All
एक सेकेंड नास्टिंका जी रुकिए, आपको पूरी कहानी बताएगा ये लड़का, पागल है पूरा। कोई तो आ जाओ यार, थोड़ी तो बकचोदी कर लूं मैं, जो कोई आता ही नहीं है स्ट्रीम में। कुछ तो मजा आए, चल रहा है कुछ, जो कुछ हो रहा है नहीं। घटिया कैमरा सेटअप कैसे कर दिया है भाई तू? मैंने नहीं किया है। नास्टिंका हो गया क्या? तुम नास्टिंका के साथ कुछ हो रहा है क्या? तेरा चल रहा है क्या कुछ नास्टिंगड़ू? अब फिर भी ठीक लग रहा। नहीं भाई, ठीक नहीं है, खराब कर दिया आपने सेटअप। अब तो तेरे तो मेरी ना नजर लगी, तेरे तो हटाते दी में दिलाला पुछदा मैं तेरा क्यों करा। कोई तो आ जाए स्ट्रीम में, थोड़ी बकचोदी तो कर लूं। अच्छा ऐसा है क्या? इसीलिए ऊपर की लाइट पहले तो बंद होती है तब क्लियर होता है। आपने ऊपर वाली लेयर को पहले बंद करना पड़ता है। अभी भी ठीक नहीं है। अबे यार, इतना बढ़िया कैमरा सेटअप तो खराब कर दिया है छोड़। नाचो, भूख पड़ो। दुनियादारी से क्या लेना, क्या लेना, क्या लेके आए थे? यहाँ से अगर पैर उठाएंगे हम, मस्त हमारी टांगे दिखेंगी। ये तो हमको करना नहीं है। ऐसे छुपा लो, थोड़ी देर, थोड़ी देर छुपा ही ले। ये आई मेरी टांगे ऊपर, दूसरी टांगे अभी आई। लेग 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 वो हो रहा है। मैं जो डिलीट करता है स्ट्रीम, दोस्तों विस्की के बीच में अपनी टांगे ले आए याद में। छी भाई छी हर्ष, सॉरी दोस्तों।
or rather, what I was doing, or the hero of this whole affair, is myself, my own humble person. You want to know why I became so alarmed and was flustered for an entire day by the unexpected visit of a friend? You want to know why I was so startled? Why I blushed so when the door to my room opened? Why I didn't know how to receive my guest? And why I floundered so shamefully under the weight of my own hospitality? Well, yes, Nastinka answered. That's the whole point. Listen, you tell it splendidly, but could you tell it somehow less splendidly? Otherwise you talk as though you were reading from a book. Nastinka, I answered in a dignified and stern voice, scarcely holding back my laughter. Dear Nastinka, I know that I'm telling it splendidly. I plead guilty, but I don't know how to tell it differently. Now, dear Nastinka, now I'm like King Solomon's genie, trapped in an earthenware urn for 1,000 years under 7 seals, and from which these 7 seals were at last removed. Now, dear Nastinka, when we have come together again after such a lengthy separation, because I have known you a long time, Nastinka, because I have long been searching for someone, and that is a sign that I was looking precisely for you, and that we were fated to meet now. Now in my head thousands of valves have opened, and I must set loose this river of words, or I will choke to death. So then, I ask that you do not interrupt me, Nastinka, but listen obediently and dutifully. Otherwise, I'll keep my silence. No, by no means. Speak. I won't say another word. To continue, there is, my friend Nastinka, in my day 1 hour that I like exceedingly. It is the hour when almost all business Duties and engagements are coming to an end,
Dust
and everybody is
पक्का।
hurrying home to dinner to lie down and rest, and there and then, as they're making their way home, they concoct other cheerful schemes pertaining to the evening, the night, and all the rest of their free time. At this hour, our hero too, for allow me, Nastinka, to tell the story in the third person, because it's terribly embarrassing to tell all this in the first person. So then, at this hour, our hero too, who has also not been idle, walks along behind the others. But a strange sense of pleasure plays on his pale, somewhat rumpled face. With feeling, he looks at the sunset, which slowly fades away in the cold Petersburg sky. When I say he looks, I'm lying. He doesn't look, but he contemplates it somehow without thinking, as if he were tired or preoccupied at the same time with some other more interesting object, so that he can only cursorily, almost involuntarily, spare time for everything around him. He is pleased because he is finished until tomorrow with the business that he finds irksome, and he is as happy as a schoolboy who has been dismissed from the classroom to his favourite games and mischief.
but ये तो
Look
होता
at
है
his
भाई रोज।
profile, Nastinka. You'll see at once that the joyful feeling fortunately has already begun to have an effect on his weak nerves and morbidly excited imagination. He's fallen deep in thought about something. Do you think it's about dinner? About this evening? What is he looking
बिरयानी
at back there?
बैंचोद।
At that respectable-looking gentleman who bowed so picturesquely to the lady riding past him in a glittering carriage drawn by those frisky horses? No, Nastinka. What does he care now about such trifles? His own particular life has already made him rich. He somehow suddenly became rich, and not in vain did the farewell ray of the dying sun so gaily sparkle before him and call forth an entire swarm of impressions from his warmed heart. Now he scarcely notices the path on which even the most petty trifle would have struck him earlier. Now the goddess of fantasy, if you have read Zhukovsky, dear Nastinka, has already spun her golden warp and begun to fashion before his eyes patterns of a fantastic, marvellous life. And who knows, perhaps with her whimsical hand she has transported him to the seventh crystal heaven from the excellent granite sidewalk on which he was walking home. Try stopping him now, and ask him suddenly where he's standing now, along which streets has he walked. He probably will remember nothing, neither where he was walking, nor where he is now standing, and after blushing with vexation, he will certainly tell some lie in order to save face. That's why he was so taken aback, almost crying out and looking all around in alarm, when a very respectable old woman who had lost her way politely stopped him in the middle of the sidewalk and began to ask him for directions. Frowning with vexation, he carries on walking, scarcely noticing that he has caused more than one passerby to smile and turn round to look at him as he walked away, and that some little girl, as she timidly made way for him, began to laugh loudly as she looked wide-eyed at his broad, contemplative smile and gesturing hands. But the same fantasy, caught up in its playful flight, the old woman and the curious passers-by and the laughing girl and the peasants who were spending their night right there on the barges that crowded the Fontanka, let's suppose that at this moment our hero was walking along there, and mischievously wove everybody and everything into its canvas, like a fly in a spider's web, and with this new acquisition the eccentric had entered his comforting lair, sat down to dinner, finished his dinner long ago, and only came to when the pensive and eternally doleful Matrona who waits on him had already cleared everything from the table and given him his pipe. He came to and recalled with surprise that he had already had his dinner, but had taken no notice whatsoever how that was accomplished. It had grown dark in the room. His heart feels empty and forlorn. The whole kingdom of dream has collapsed around him, collapsed without a trace, without a sound or fuss. It flew past, like a vision. And he himself doesn't remember what he was dreaming about. But some vague sensation faintly disturbs his breast and causes it to ache. Some new desire seductively tickles and excites his fancy, and imperceptibly summons a whole swarm of new phantoms.
क्या है?
Quiet reigns in the little room. Solitude and indolence caress the imagination. It faintly catches fire. It is faintly brought to the boil, just like the water in the coffee pot of old Matrona, who placidly potters about next door in the kitchen as she makes her cook's coffee. Now it's already gently breaking through in bursts. Now the book, picked up without purpose and at random, is already falling from my dreamer's hand, without his even getting to the third page. His imagination is once again incited, excited, and suddenly again a new world, a new enchanting life with its glistening vistas flashes before him. A new dream is new happiness, a new dose of exquisite, voluptuous poison. Oh, what does real life have to offer him? In his misdirected view, you and
लक्ष्योस सीधा यहीं से पूछते हैं ना, ऐसा होता है क्या? अरे यार, एआई के जमाने में मैं कहाँ गूगल कर रहा हूँ? तो ये चल थोड़ी रहा है, इतना धीरे चल रहा है पैंचो। ऐसा लग रहा है बीमार हो गया पैंचो। कल तक बता देना मीनिंग। हेलो, केम छो? गंदी चीज सर्च करते हो? किसी को टेक्स्ट करते भाई। एक और ढूंढना था भाई मेरे को, एक और चीज रुक जाओ। आ गया चीज। देखेंगे।
and I, Nastinka, live so idly, slowly, sluggishly. In his view, we are all so dissatisfied with our fate, so worn down by our life. And really, as a matter of fact, look how everything, at first glance, among us is cold, gloomy, indeed wrathful. The poor things, my dreamer thinks, and it's no wonder that he should think so. Look at these magical phantoms that so enchantingly, so whimsically, so boundlessly and broadly take shape before him in such a magical, animated picture, in which the most important figure in the foreground, of course, is he himself, our dreamer, his own dear person. Look what diverse adventures, what an endless swarm of ecstatic daydreams. You will ask, perhaps, what does he dream about? Why ask that? About everything. About the role of the poet, who at first goes unrecognised but is later crowned with success. About friendship with Hoffman, St. Bartholomew's Night, Diana Vernon, the heroic role of Ivan Vassilievich in the taking of Kazan, Clara Mowbray, Effie Deans, the council of the prelates and huss before them, the rising of the dead in Robert. Do you remember the music? It smells of the graveyard. Minna and Brenda, the battle of Berezina, the reading of a poem at Countess Vidi's, Danton, Cleopatra e suoi amanti, the little house in Colomna. His own little corner, with a dear creature at his side who listens on a winter's evening, with her little mouth and eyes open, just as you're listening to me now, my little angel. No, Nastinka, what need has he, this voluptuous sluggard, of this life that you and I desire so? He thinks that this is a poor, pitiful life, not anticipating that perhaps some day the sad hour will strike for him as well, when, for a single day of this pitiful life, he would give up all of his fantastic years, and give them up not for joy, or for happiness, and without wishing to choose, in this hour of sadness, repentance and boundless sorrow. But this terrible time has yet to come. He desires nothing, because he is above desire, because he has everything, because he is sated, because he himself is the artist of his life, and he creates it for himself every hour to suit his latest whim. And you see, this fairy tale, fantastic world is created so easily, so naturally, as though all this were truly not a phantom. Indeed, he is prepared to believe at certain moments that all of this life is not the excitement of feelings, not a mirage, not a delusion of the imagination, but that it is indeed authentic, genuine, real. Why, tell me, Nastinka, oh, why, at such moments, does one's breathing become laboured? Why? By what magic, by what mysterious caprice does the pulse quicken? Do tears gush forth from the dreamer's eyes? His pale, moist cheeks burn as his entire being fills with such irresistible delight? Why do whole sleepless nights pass by like a single instant in inexhaustible merriment and happiness, and when the dawn's rosy ray shines through the windows and the daybreak illumines the gloomy room with its dubious, fantastic light, such as we have in Petersburg, why does our dreamer, exhausted and weary, throw himself on his bed and fall asleep, his tormented and overwhelmed spirit trembling with ecstasy while his heart aches with a sweet agony? Yes, Nastinka, you deceive yourself and unwittingly and dispassionately believe that it is a genuine, true passion that disturbs his soul. You unwittingly believe that there is something alive and tangible in his incorporeal daydreams. But you see, it's all a delusion. Take, for example, the love that has pierced his breast with all its inexhaustible joy, with all its wearisome torments. Just look at him and you'll be convinced. Would you believe, when you look at him, dear Nastinka, that indeed he has never known her whom he loves so in his frenzied daydreams? Can it be that he has only seen her in certain captivating phantoms and only dreamed this passion? Can it really be that they have not spent so many years of their lives together hand in hand, alone, just the two of them, having forsaken the entire world and each uniting their life, their world, with the life of their friend? Can it really be that at this late hour, when the time had come to part, she did not lay there sobbing and grieving on his breast, not hearing the storm which was breaking under the bleak sky, or the wind which plucked and carried away the tears from her black lashes? Can this really all have been a dream? This garden, cheerless, desolate and wild, with paths overgrown with moss, secluded and gloomy, where they so often would walk together, where they hoped, grieved, loved each other for such a long time, so long and tenderly. And this strange ancestral home in which she had lived for such a long time, secluded and melancholy, with her sullen old husband, always silent and peevish, who frightened them, while they, timid as children, dolefully and timorously concealed their love from each other. How they suffered, how fearful they were, and how innocent and pure was their love, and how, it goes without saying, Nastinka, malicious people were. And my God, was it really not she he met later? Far from the shores of their homeland, under an alien sky, in the torrid south, in the marvellous eternal city, in the brilliance of a ball, to the thunder of music, in a palazzo, it absolutely must be a palazzo, drowned in a sea of lights, on this balcony wreathed with myrtle and roses, where she, upon recognising him, so hastily took off her mask, and whispered, "I'm free," and trembling threw herself into his arms, and with a cry of rapture they embraced, and in an instant they forgot sorrow, separation, all their torments, the gloomy house, the old man, the dismal garden in their distant homeland, the bench on which with one last passionate kiss she had torn herself away from his arms, numb from torments of despair. Oh, you must agree, Nastinka, that you would be startled, feel embarrassed, and blush like a schoolboy who had just crammed into his pocket an apple stolen from the neighbour's orchard, if some lanky, hearty lad, a merry fellow and a joker, your uninvited friend, opened your door and shouted out as if nothing had happened, "And I, my dear fellow, just got back from Pavlovsk." My goodness, the old count has died. Ineffable happiness is close at hand. And here people are coming from Pavlovsk. I pathetically fell silent upon concluding my pathetic exclamations. I remember that I wanted terribly somehow to force myself to burst out laughing, because I already sensed that a hostile little demon had begun to stir inside me, that I was about to choke, that my chin was beginning to quiver, and that my eyes were watering more and more. I expected Nastinka, who was listening to me with her intelligent eyes wide open, to burst into her childish, irrepressibly merry laughter, and was already regretting that I had gone too far, that I'd been wrong to tell her about what had long seethed in my heart, about which I could talk as though I were reading a written text, because I had long ago passed sentence on myself, and now cannot resist reading it to confess, without expecting that I should be understood. But to my surprise, she kept silent. After waiting a little bit, she gently pressed my hand, and with a timid concern asked, "Can you really have lived your whole life like that?" "My
Can
whole
you,
life, Nastinka," I replied.
motherfuckers? Can you?
"My whole life.
Really?
And I believe that's how I'll end my days." "No, that's impossible," she said uneasily. "It won't be like that. That would mean I would likely live out my whole life by grandmother's side. Listen, you do know that it's bad for you to live like that?" "I know, Nastinka, I know," I exclaimed, no longer holding my feelings in check. "And now I know, more than ever, that I've wasted all my best years for nothing. I know this now, and I feel it all the more painfully now that I see that God himself has sent you, my good angel, to me in order to tell me this and prove it to me. As I sit beside you and talk to you now, I'm terrified even to think about the future, because the future is once again loneliness, once again this stagnant, useless life. And what will there be for me to dream about when I have already been so happy, in real life, beside you? Oh, bless you, dear girl, for not turning me away from the very first, for making it possible that I can now say that I have lived at least 2 evenings in my life. Oh, no, 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 Nastinka cried out, and little tears began to glisten in her eyes. No, it won't be like that any more. We won't part like that. What are 2 evenings? Oh, Nastinka, Nastinka, do you know you have reconciled me with myself for a good long time? Do you know that now I will not think so badly of myself as I sometimes have done? Do you know that now perhaps I will no longer suffer anguish for having committed a crime and sin in my life, because a life like that is a crime and sin? And don't think that I've been exaggerating anything to you, for God's sake, Nastinka. Don't think that, because sometimes I'm overcome by moments of such anguish. Such anguish. Because at those moments,
So much
it begins to
pain.
seem that I will never be able to begin living a real life. Because it already seems that I have lost all sense, all feeling for the genuine, the real. Because in the end, I curse myself. Because after my fantastic nights, I am visited by sobering moments that are horrible. Meanwhile, you hear all around you how the throng of humanity thunders and spins in the whirlwind of life. You see how people live. They live in reality. You see that life for them is not forbidden, that their life doesn't vanish like a dream, like a vision, that their life is eternally renewing, eternally young, and not a single hour of it resembles any other. Whereas how cheerless and monotonously banal is the timorous fantasy, the slave of a shadow, of an idea, the slave of the first cloud that suddenly obscures the sun and fills with anguish the heart of every true Petersburger which holds its son so dear. But what sort of fantasy is there to be found in anguish? You sense that this inexhaustible fantasy is finally growing tired, that it is becoming exhausted under constant strain, because, you see, you're growing into manhood. You are outgrowing your former ideals. They are being smashed to dust, to bits and pieces. And if there is no other life, then you must build it from these bits and pieces. But meanwhile your soul yearns and pleads for something else. And in vain does the dreamer rake through his old dreams, as if they were ashes, searching in these ashes for at least some little
मैं
spark,
तलाश
in
में
order
ना
to
हो जाए
fan it into flames, and with this rekindled fire warm his heart which has grown cold, and resurrect in himself once again everything that he had held dear, that had touched his soul, that had made his blood boil, that had brought tears to his eyes and had so splendidly deceived him. Do you know, Nastinka, how low I have fallen? Do you know that I am compelled now to celebrate the anniversary of my own sensations? The anniversary of that which was formerly so dear, of that which in essence never took place. Because this anniversary is celebrated in honour of those same foolish phantom dreams. And to do it because even those foolish dreams are no more. Because I have nothing with which to replenish them. You see, even dreams need to be replenished. Do you know that I now like to recall and visit at certain times places where I was once happy in my own way?
Nostalgia.
I like to fashion my
Deja
present
vu.
so that it's in harmony with the irrevocable past. And I often wander, like a shadow, without need or purpose, downcast and sad, through the alleys and streets of Petersburg. And what memories! You recall, for instance, that exactly a year ago now, exactly at this very same time, at this very same hour, you wandered along this very sidewalk just as lonely, just as downcast as you are now.
Dejected.
And you recall that your dreams were sad then as well. And even though it was not better then, nevertheless you somehow feel that it was easier? That you lived more comfortably? That there wasn't this black brooding that troubles you now? That you didn't have these pangs of conscience? These gloomy, dismal pangs that now give you no peace, night or day? And you ask yourself, where are your dreams? And you shake your head and say, how quickly do the years fly by? And again you ask yourself, what have you done with your years?
What have you done?
Where have you
with your
buried your
years?
best days? Did you live or not? Look, you say to yourself, look how cold the world is becoming. More years will pass, followed by gloomy solitude, and then doddering old age will come on a walking stick, to be followed by anguish and despondency. Your fantastic world will grow pale. Your dreams will wither, die, and scatter like yellow leaves from the trees. Oh, Nastinka, it will be sad, you know, to be left alone, quite alone, and not even have something to regret. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because all that I have lost, all this, it was all nothing. A stupid round zero. It was merely a dream. Now, stop trying to make me feel sorry for you, Nastinka said,
Thank God.
wiping away a tear which had rolled down from her eye. That's all over now. The two of us will be together now. Now, no matter what happens to me, we will never part. Listen, I'm a simple girl without much education, although my grandmother did hire a teacher for me, but I truly do understand you. Because everything that you've told me just now, I experienced myself when grandmother pinned me to her dress. Of course, I couldn't have told it so well as you have done. I'm not educated, she added timidly, because she was still feeling some sort of respect for my pathetic speech and my lofty style. But I'm very happy that you have confided in me so completely. Now I know you through and through. I know everything about you.
And
you know what? I want to tell you my story now, all of it, frankly, and afterwards you'll give me your advice. You're a very sensible man. Do you promise to give me your advice?
Yeah, bro.
Nastinka,
Let's
I
go.
replied. Although I've never been an advisor, much less a sensible advisor, I see now that it would somehow be very sensible if we were to always live like this, and we would give each other a lot of sensible advice. Well, my pretty Nastinka, what advice should I give you? Tell me frankly. I'm so cheerful, happy, bold, and sensible now that I won't be at a loss for words. No, Nastinka interrupted, laughing. It's not only sensible advice that I need advice that is heartfelt and brotherly, as though you'd loved me all your life. All right, Nastinka, all right, I cried out in delight. And if I'd already loved you for 20 years, I still couldn't have loved you more than I do right now. Give me your hand, Nastinka said. Here it is, I answered, as I gave her my hand. And so, let's begin my story. Nastinka's story. Half of my story you already know. That is, you know that I have an old grandmother. Okay. If the other half is as short as this one, I interrupted, laughing, keep quiet and listen. First of all, a condition. You're not to interrupt me, or else I'll very likely get muddled. Now, listen quietly. I have an old grandmother. I found myself with her when I was still...
एक सेकंड मॉडल का मतलब भूल गया हूँ अनचाइडी पूरी जिंदगी है मेरी मॉडल मेरे चैनल का नाम होना चाहिए मॉडल्ड हार्शली मॉडल मॉडल कंफ्यूज करता हूँ मॉडल समझो नींद आ रही है भाई को वैसे तो नींद नहीं आती है आज नींद आ रही है साले को हमारे लिटराटी को नींद आ रही है
a very little girl, because my mother and father had died. It's fair to suppose that grandmother had been richer at one time, because even now she recalls better days. It was she who taught me French, and then later hired a teacher for me. When I was 15 years old, I'm 17 now, the lessons stopped.
17 or
and
26?
It was at this time that I got into a lot of mischief. But I won't tell you what I did. It's enough to say that my misdeed was minor. But grandmother called me one morning and said that since she was blind, she couldn't keep an eye on me. So she took a pin and fastened my dress to hers, and then she said that we would sit like that for the rest of our lives if, of course, I didn't behave better. In a word, at first, it was quite impossible to get away. I did all my work, reading and studying right beside grandmother. I once tried to trick her and talked Fjokla into sitting in my place. Fjokla's our maid. She's deaf. Fjokla sat down instead of me. Grandmother had fallen asleep in her armchair at the time, and I set off for my girlfriend's not far away. Well, it ended badly. Grandmother woke up when I was away and asked about something, thinking that I was still sitting quietly in my place. Fiocla could see that Grandmother was asking for something, but she couldn't hear what it was. She thought and thought about what she should do, undid the pin, and took to her heels. Here Nastinka paused and laughed. I started to laugh with her. She stopped at once. Now listen, don't you laugh at my grandmother. I'm laughing because it's funny. What can I do when Grandmother really is like that? But I love her all the same. Well, that time I certainly got what for. I was sat down in my place at once and wasn't allowed to budge an inch. Oh yes, I also forgot to tell you that Grandmother has her own house. That is, a tiny little house with only 3 windows, all made of wood and as old as Grandmother herself. And there's an attic upstairs. And so a new lodger moved into our attic. Consequently, there must have been an old lodger, I noted in passing. Well, of course there was, Nastinka replied. And one who knew how to keep quiet better than you do. True, he could barely move his tongue. He was a little old man, withered, mute, blind, lame, so that it finally became impossible for him to live in this world, and he died. Then we needed a new lodger, because we can't live without a lodger. That, together with Grandmother's pension, is practically our entire income. The new lodger, as luck would have it, was a young man, not from around here, from out of town. Since he didn't try to bargain with her, Grandmother took him in, but later she asked, So, Nastinka, is our lodger young or not? I didn't want to lie. Now, I say, Grandmother, it's not
दादी
as
ऐसी
though
क्यों
he's
पूछ रही है?
very young, but then he's not an old man. Well, and is he good looking? Grandmother asks.
दादी
Again, I don't wish to lie. Yes, I say. He's good looking, Grandmother. And Grandmother says, Oh, what a nuisance, what a nuisance! I'm saying this, granddaughter, so that you don't get carried away by him. Oh, what times we live in! Who would have thought it possible? Such a piddling lodger, and he has to be good-looking as well. Things were different in the old days. It's always the old days with Grandmother. She was younger in the old days, and the sun was warmer in the old days, and cream didn't go sour so quickly in the old days. It's always the old days. And so I sit and keep quiet.
रशिया में भी
I think to
दादी
myself,
ऐसी होती है.
Why is Grandmother filling my head with ideas and asking whether our lodger is handsome or whether he's young? That was all there was to it. I just gave it a thought and there and then began counting my stitches again. I was knitting stockings and then completely forgot about it. And then, one morning, the lodger came to ask about his room being wallpapered, as he had been promised. One thing led to another. Grandmother is talkative, you see, and she says, Go to my bedroom, Nastinka, and bring me my accounts. I immediately jumped up, blushing, I don't know why, and I'd forgotten that I was sitting there pinned to Grandmother. I didn't quietly unpin myself so that the lodger wouldn't see. No, I dashed off so that Grandmother's chair went flying. When I saw that the lodger now knew everything about me, I blushed, stood there as if I were rooted to the ground, and burst into tears. I became so ashamed and miserable at that moment that life didn't seem worth living. Grandmother shouts, Why are you just standing there? Which made me cry even more. When the lodger saw this, when he saw that I was embarrassed on account of him, he took his leave and went away at once. From that moment on, I would practically die at the slightest sound in the entrance hall. There goes the lodger, I'd say to myself, and quietly undo the pin just in case. Only it was never him. He never came. 2 weeks passed. The lodger sent word through Fiocla that he had a lot of French books, and that they were all good books, suitable for me to read. Wouldn't Grandmother like me to read them to her, so that we wouldn't be bored? Grandmother accepted with gratitude, but she kept asking if the books were moral or not. Because if the books were immoral, then you, Nastinka, she says, mustn't read them under any circumstances. You'll learn bad things. And what would I learn, Grandmother? What's written in them? Oh, she says, they describe how young men lead well-behaved girls astray. And under the pretense of wanting to marry them, they carry them off from their parents' house. How they later abandon these unfortunate girls to the whims of fate, and how they then perish in the most lamentable manner. I, Grandmother says, have read a lot of books like that, and everything, she says, is so wonderfully described that you sit up all night quietly reading. So you, Nastinka, she says, see that you don't read them. What kind of books, she asks, has he sent? They're all novels by Walter Scott, Grandmother. Novels by Walter Scott? Oh, wait just a minute. There must be some sort of shenanigans going on here. Take a good look to see if he slipped a little love note in one of them. No, I say, Grandmother, there isn't a note. And look under the binding as well.
ज्यादा नहीं हुआ, वो तीसरा चैप्टर नहीं है.
Sometimes they stuff it into the binding, the rascals. No, Grandmother, there isn't anything under the binding either. Well, what did I tell you? And so we began to read Walter Scott, and in a month or so, we had read almost half. Then he sent us some more, and some more. He sent Pushkin. In the end, I couldn't be without a book, and stopped thinking about marrying a Chinese prince. That's how things stood when I chanced to meet our lodger on the staircase. Grandmother had sent me for something. He stopped. I blushed, and he blushed. He laughed, though, said hello, asked after grandmother's health, and says, "So, have you read the books?" I answered, "Yes." "Which one," he asks, "did you like the most?" And I say, "I liked Ivanhoe and Pushkin best of all." And that was the end of it that time. A week later, I ran into him again, on the staircase. This time grandmother hadn't sent me. I had needed to get something for myself. It was after 2, which was when the lodger would come home. "Hello," he says. I answer, "Hello." "Don't you get bored," he asks, "sitting with your grandmother all day long?" As soon as he asked me that, I blushed. I don't know why. I became embarrassed, and once again my feelings were hurt, evidently because now others had begun asking questions about this. I wanted to walk away without answering, but I didn't have the strength. "Listen," he says, "you're a good girl. Forgive me for talking with you like this, but I assure you I wish you well more than your grandmother does. Don't you have any girlfriends whom you can go and visit?" I say that I don't have any, that there was one, Mashinka, but that she's gone away to Pskov. "Listen," he says, "would you like to go to the theatre with me?" "To the theatre? But what about grandmother?" "Well," he says, "you can go without telling her." "No," I say, "I don't want to deceive grandmother. Goodbye." "Well, goodbye," he says, and he didn't say another word. Only after dinner, he comes to see us. He sat down, talked with grandmother for a long time, asked whether she goes out anywhere, whether she has any friends, and suddenly he says, "I took a box at the opera today. They're putting on The Barber of Seville. Friends wanted to go and then cancelled, so I'm left with the tickets." "The Barber of Seville?" grandmother exclaimed. "Is that the same barber they used to put on in the old days?" "Yes," he says. "It's the very same barber." And he cast a glance at me. And then I understood everything. Blushed. And my heart began to thump in expectation. "But of course I know it," grandmother says. "In the old days I even sang Rosina in amateur theatricals." "So would you like to go today?" said the lodger. "My tickets will go to waste." "Yes, I suppose we could go," grandmother says. "Why shouldn't we go? After all, my Nastinka has never been to the theatre." My goodness. What joy! We at once pulled ourselves together, got ready, and set off. Even though grandmother is blind, she still wanted to hear the music. And besides, she is a kind old woman. More than anything, she wanted me to enjoy myself. We should never have gone on our own. I won't tell you my impressions of The Barber of Seville, except to say that all that evening, our lodger looked at me so nicely and spoke so nicely that I saw at once that he had wanted to test me in the morning by proposing that I go with him alone. Well, what joy! I went to bed so proud, so happy, my heart was pounding so that I became slightly feverish, and I raved on about The Barber of Seville all night long. I thought that he would stop by more and more often after that, but that wasn't the case. He almost stopped coming altogether, and so he would drop by once a month, and then only to invite us to the theatre. We went with him again a couple of times, only I wasn't at all happy with this. I saw that he simply felt sorry for me, because I was kept under grandmother's thumb, and there wasn't anything else to it. And then, as time went on, something came over me. I couldn't sit still, and I couldn't read, and I couldn't work. Sometimes I would laugh and do something to grandmother out of spite, while at other times I would simply cry. In the end, I grew thin and almost became ill. The opera season was over, and the lodger stopped dropping by altogether. Whenever we would meet, always on that same staircase, it goes without saying, he would bow so silently, so seriously, as though he didn't wish to speak, and then walk down all the way to the front door while I was still standing halfway up the stairs, as red as a cherry, because all my blood would rush to my head whenever we met. Now, we're coming to the end. Exactly a year ago, in May, the lodger comes to us and tells grandmother that he has finished all his business and that he must return to Moscow for a year. When I heard this, I turned white and collapsed onto the chair, half dead. Grandmother didn't notice anything, and after announcing that he was going away, he took his leave and left. What was I to do? I thought and thought. I became more and more miserable, and finally, I came to a decision. He was to leave the next day, and I decided that I would bring everything to a conclusion that evening after grandmother had gone to bed. And that's what happened. I gathered into a bundle all my dresses, as many underclothes as was necessary, and with the bundle in hand,
रुक जाओ
neither
भाई
dead nor
यार,
alive, I set off to our
थोड़ा सा हो जाना।